Hey guys, Toby Mathis from Anderson Business Advisors and Law Group, and this is part 4 of a 4-part series on nonprofits. Part 4 is specifically forming and establishing a nonprofit board of directors. So there's going to be a few questions that we're going to go through, actually 6 questions on this one. Number 1 is, can the founder of a nonprofit also be on the board of directors? And the answer is, absolutely you can. Just remember what I said in a previous section. I said there's really 3 areas. There's the state, there's the feds, and there's third parties. This is going to fall into the category of third parties. This is your paperwork. You can choose to have a board with 10 people. Depending on your state, you can actually go down to 1. I live in a state, Nevada, where you can have 1 board of director. Like you can have a 1-person board. And yes, it could be the founder of that nonprofit. Generally speaking, I'm going to say, hey, at least have a couple outside directors no matter what. There's lots of folks that you can either ask on your board. There's people that are used to serving on nonprofit boards. There's professional outside board members like myself who actually, for a fee, you could actually say, hey, will you come on and make sure that I'm doing things right on my board, lead meetings, things like that. There's all sorts of folks that are out there. You don't have to pay them a salary. A lot of them will do something like a fringe benefits, or they'll do it as at a very reduced fee. But the answer is yes, a founder can be on the board of nonprofits, be on the board of directors. Now, keep in mind when we use board of directors, that is corporation terminology. I like to see nonprofits as a corporation. I like to see them run by a board of directors as opposed to board of trustees and things like that. That's my preference. It's what the IRS is used to seeing, and we've never had one denied. So I tend to go with what I know will always work. Are board of directors of a nonprofit paid? The answer is they can be, yes. Do you have to? No. Can a board of directors be paid with something like tax-free fringe benefits? For example, if I join public radio, maybe they give me some access to some tickets that I can buy that aren't available to the general public because they, hey, I have 1,000 seats at this particular concert. I'm still buying them. If they give them to me, now I'm receiving compensation, right? Then if they're giving me something of value, for example, if they gave me a car, I have to pay tax on the value of the car, unless it's 100% used for business purposes and it's I'm going to give it back to the company. They could be paid W-2. They can be paid just benefits. There's just a ton. It's the same thing in the for-profit realm as in the nonprofit realm. The one thing you want to be aware of is that if you're paying somebody who has a conflict, like, hey, I set up the nonprofit and I'm getting paid a high salary, you really should have a third party review it to make sure it's reasonable. If it's going to be a high salary, if you have somebody who's making hundreds of thousands or more than $1 million a year, you need to make sure that it's reasonable and that they're not looking at it as a distribution of profit or something like that. We don't want to mess with the exemption of the nonprofit. But yes, the board of directors can be paid. It's commensurate with what they're doing. Can the treasurer and president of a nonprofit be the same person? The answer to that one is yes. But again, you always look at it and say it depends on the state. I'm not aware of any restrictions, but you could actually have a 1-person nonprofit here where all of those categories are filled. Board of directors is 1 party. All of the officers are 1 person. It's usually going to be a president, a treasurer, and a secretary. Sometimes it's president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. But whatever the case, you can have 1-person corporations. If there's restrictions in your state, then we would look at the statute and say, hey, we would make sure that you don't trip on that. And it's something that technically your state could change at a given moment. Now, remember, you have creatures of state law where we're filing it. And then we also had the feds where we get our exemption. The feds don't have a restriction. We'd be looking at the state saying, hey, are there any restrictions on that? Can the founder of a nonprofit receive a salary? The answer is an absolutely yes. And more importantly, that founder can actually have control of the organization. They can have veto powers. They could also have something that they bequeath to third parties. I could give you my powers and power of veto to my children or whatnot, or to a surviving spouse. So you keep control of the nonprofit even after you're passing, or if you were disabled, or if you just resigned. You can make sure that you have a situation where a member of your family. I sometimes joke about the Clinton Foundation. I don't want to get into politics, but when you saw Bill and Hillary pull off of that nonprofit, the Clinton Foundation, they said Chelsea needs to stay on the board. Chelsea, no doubt, has a degree of control over that board. And so Bill and Hillary felt very comfortable stepping off the board of a company with many tens of millions of dollars in that nonprofit in which they were shepherding. Can a CEO also be on the board of directors? Now, CEO is a term of art. You could have a CEO or you could choose not to. You could have an executive director. You could choose not to. But the answer is yes. You can have an officer position and also be on the board of directors. It's very common. A lot of folks will say, I want to have an executive director, somebody who is like the chairman of the board, who leads the organization. Yes, that can still be the founder. These things you can exert a great deal of control over as long as it's not private inurement. It's not benefiting you. It's not, the profits don't go into your pocket. They're staying in that nonprofit and it's doing what it's set up to do. There are really two flavors of nonprofits. There's the private foundation realm and there's the operating charity. The way I always look at it is the operating charity does stuff for the benefit of third parties, and the private foundations support those organizations that are doing stuff for the benefit of third parties. It's much better to operate in the category of being an operating charity, and you can absolutely be paid, and you can absolutely have a CEO, you can have a CFO, a COO. You can have different categories of officers, up to you on how you categorize them. Remember, we have the state, we have the federal, and then we have third parties. When we're giving fancy titles, it's what we're dealing with third parties. We just have to make sure that's allowed by the state. I'm not aware of any restrictions. Every company you could determine to have an executive director or CEO or something along those lines. How does a nonprofit organization pay its employees? And the answer is real simple. The same way a for-profit pays its employees wages or compensation for services that are being provided or time being provided. This is where it gets different. A nonprofit is different from a for-profit in that a nonprofit does not pay out its profits to those individuals, to its employees. So for example, if I am a for-profit organization, I have shareholders, I may issue dividends. You do not do that in a nonprofit. There's no such thing as a dividend because there's no such thing as shareholders in a nonprofit. I pay you for the work that you do. One of the reasons my clients who have children, they're worried about they have some wealth and they're concerned about their kids. I love to put the kids on a board of directors where I can say, here's what your salary range is. Maybe we adjust it for cost of living, but they have to do things to earn that money. And they're receiving that money in exchange for doing something as opposed to just getting an estate. Here's $1 million, give it to Junior and watch what he does. It's usually not good, right? Instead, we have the money go into a nonprofit and then you say, Junior, you can serve on this board. And by the way, I have some other folks sitting on that board. You're entitled to sit on that board and you're entitled to be paid a reasonable salary for what you're doing. Now you're doing something that's helping the family name or helping a group of people that you believe is important to help. I always look at Carnegie, the richest man in the world in the late 1900s, 1899, whatever that would be. And you looked at what he set up and he just libraries all over the place and educational endowments, all these things that he did that still go on to this day. I always think how important that is. We just making it more modern. Take a look at IKEA. The owner of IKEA made sure that IKEA was held by several nonprofits and that he gave a minority position to the children so they couldn't sell it off. He wanted to make sure his dream continued on and they'll have an income stream forever, literally. So I look at those things and think it's just amazing. So a nonprofit organization can absolutely pay its employees. Those employees could absolutely be your relatives or friends or people that care about the causes you care about, and they could absolutely be paid a salary. And that's what makes them so attractive. And as they grow, because they're not being taxed, it has the habit, when we look at these things, of gaining much more momentum than if they had been run as their for-profit counterparts, where everything's constantly being diced by taxes. In a nonprofit, if I don't want to take the money out, I don't take the money out. It just keeps growing. There's no tax that's being due. If I did that with an ordinary corporation, depending on when I did it, it used to be 39% tax was the highest. Now it's 21%, but then they would tax it again when it came back out. You're never getting hit with those taxes. Just leave it in there. Let it grow. If I need the money, take a salary out for the work that I'm doing. You can even do deferred compensation plans and spread it out. There's all sorts of things that you can do with a nonprofit. They're an extremely powerful vehicle. Well, that's it for the four-part series. You're always more than welcome to come to Anderson Business Advisors and our website, Anderson Advisors, and learn more, watch the videos we post. But that was part 4 of a 4-part series. Thanks for joining me. Again, this was Toby Mathis from Anderson Business Advisors and Law Group.